قد أفلح المؤمنون.
And now the words that I have been dreading from the minute I sat down to write this Maqtal is that now al-Husayn salamullahi alayh was all alone. All of his Ansar are gone. His relatives from Abi Talib, all of them have been killed, all of them had been martyred in front of him. And I could not find a poet or a historian or anyone who can describe this situation better than what we find in Dua al-Jawshan al-Saghir. Dua al-Jawshan al-Saghir, there's a part of the dua which reads as following: إلهي وكم من عبد أمسى وأصبح يقاسي الحرب ومباشرة القتال بنفسه قد غشيته الأعداء من كل جانب بالسيوف والرماح وآلة الحرب يتقعقع في الحديد قد بلغ مجهوده لا يعرف حيلة ولا يجد مهربا قد أدنف بالجراحات ومتشحطا بدمه تحت السنابك والأرجل يتمنى شربة من الماء أو نظرة إلى أهله وولده لا يقدر عليها. My God, how many servants spent the night and the day enduring war and the direct confrontation of combat himself, surrounded by enemies from all sides with swords, spears, and instruments of war. He clatters in his armor, having reached the limits of his strength. He knows no stratagem and finds no escape, heavily wounded and drenched in his own blood between hooves and feet, longing for a sip of water or a glance at his family and children, but he cannot attain it. And now we shall narrate to you the way Abu Abdullah al-Husayn himself was martyred. Al-Tabari reports in volume 19, page 153, that al-Husayn alayhi salam remained there for a long time during the day. Whenever one of the people came against him, he would turn aside from him and was unwilling to be responsible for his death and such a dreadful sin. A man from the Banu Badda' of Kinda called Malik ibn Nasir came against him and struck him on the head with his sword. Al-Husayn alayhi salam was wearing a hooded cloak. The sword cut through the hood of the cloak and wounded his head, and the cloak became covered with blood. Al-Husayn alayhi salam declared, because of that, may you never eat and drink with your hand. May Allah gather you on the day of judgment with those people who are wrongdoers. He threw down the cloak and called for a cap. He put on the cap and wound a turban around it. He was tired and had become less active. Al-Baladhri and Al-Tabari report, and we are quoting Al-Tabari in his Tarikh, in volume 19, page 156, they report that Jabir ibn Yazid al-Ju'fi reported that al-Husayn's thirst became so great that he approached Nahr al-Furat in order to drink water. But al-Husayn ibn Tamim, la'inahullah, shot an arrow at him and it hit him in his mouth. The blood spurted from his mouth and he brushed it away into the air. Then he praised and glorified Allah, and he brought his hands together and said, O Allah, count their number, destroy their power, and do not let one of them remain on the earth. When al-Husayn's camp was overrun, he rode towards the dam trying to reach the Furat. But one of the Banu Aban ibn Daram and some of the Umayyad horsemen prevented al-Husayn from getting to the Furat. So al-Husayn cried out, O Allah, make him thirsty. The Abani took an arrow and lodged it into al-Husayn's throat. Al-Husayn pulled out the arrow and held out the palms of his hands, and both of them were filled with blood. Then al-Husayn said, O Allah, I complain to you about what is being done to the son of the daughter of your Prophet. Al-Tabari further reports on page 157 to 158 that at this point Ash-Shamr ibn al-Jawshan la'inahullah advanced with a group of about 10 Kufan foot soldiers opposite the place where al-Husayn had put his baggage and his family. Al-Husayn moved towards it, but they cut him off from his baggage. So al-Husayn cried out, Shame on you! If you have no religion and do not fear the day of return, then at least in matters of your world be free-born men who have some qualities of nobility, and prevent the mean and ignorant ones among you from getting to my baggage and my family. And so the son of the Jawshan la'inahullah snarled back at him, That is your task, Yabda Fatima. He then advanced against Abu Abdullah with a group of men. Among them were Abu Janib, and his name was Abdul Rahman al-Ju'fi, Al-Qash'ab ibn Amr ibn Yazid al-Ju'fi, Salih ibn Wahab al-Yazani, Sinan Ibn Anas, and Khawli ibn Yazid. Ash-Shamr then began to egg them on. He went past Abu Janib, who was fully armed, and told him, Advance against him. And the man retorted, what is stopping you from advancing against him? Ash-Shamr responded, are you saying that to me? And Abu Janib demanded, are you saying it to me? They cursed one another, and Abu Janib said, by Allah, I am tempted to dash the point of my spear into your eye. So Ash-Shamr went away, declaring, by Allah, if I have the power to harm you, I will do so. Al-Tabari and al-Balaghi both report, and this can be read in Tariq al-Tabari, volume 19, page 158, that Ash-Shamr advanced once again towards al-Imam al-Husayn. And al-Husayn alayhi salam began to attack the men, and they withdrew from him. But they surrounded him completely. At this point, a young boy from his family came towards al-Husayn. His aunt, the Sayyidah Zainab salamullahi alayhi, tried to stop him, but to no avail. Al-Husayn told her to keep him with her, but the boy refused. He rushed towards al-Husayn and stood at his side. Bahr ibn Ka'b ibn Ubaidillah of Banu Taymullah ibn Tha'laba rushed towards al-Husayn with a sword, and the young lad cried out at him, son of an impure woman, are you trying to kill my uncle? And so Bahr struck the young boy with the sword. The boy tried to fend off the blow with his arm, but the sword cut through his skin, and his arm was left hanging. So the boy screamed out, oh my mother. Al-Husayn took hold of him and embraced him and said to him, my nephew, try to bear what has come to you and consider the good in it. For Allah will unite you with your righteous ancestors, with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, with Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, with Hamza, with Ja'far and Al-Hasan ibn Ali. Al-Tabari further reports from Humayd ibn Muslim that on that day I heard Al-Husayn say, O Allah, keep the drops of rain from the sky away from them. Deny them the blessings of the earth. Even as you have made life pleasant for them for a time, divide them into factions and make them follow the ways of factions, and let their rulers never be pleased with them. They summoned us so that they might support us, and then they became hostile to us and killed us. He then struck out against the foot soldiers until they withdrew from him once again. And as a side note, that young man who came forward to defend al-Imam al-Husayn salamullahi alayhi is Abdullah ibn al-Hasan salamullahi alayhi. According to Shaykhun al-Mufid, and I believe Abu al-Faraj also confirms this in Maqtal al-Talibiyin. Al-Baladhuri, al-Tabarani, and al-Tabari. And we're quoting from al-Tabari's narrative, volume 19, page 159, and the report of al-Tabarani was confirmed to be authentic by al-Haythami. They all report that when al-Husayn was left with only 3 or 4 people, he called for a pair of well-woven trousers, or sarawil, in which the edge of which was well-woven Yemeni cloth glittered. He took them and tore them and split them open so that he should not have them plundered. As in Imam al-Husayn salamullahi alayhi took his own clothes and he ripped them, hoping that this would discourage his enemies from plundering his clothes. So one of his followers said to him, you should wear under breeches under them. And he answered, those are lowly clothes and it is not appropriate for me to wear them. When he was killed, Bahr ibn Ka'b la'inahullah plundered him of his trousers and left him lying naked on the battlefield of Karbala. Thiqat al-Islam al-Kulayni rahimahullah reported with his chain from Abu Ja'far al-Baqir salamullahi alayh. This can be found in Kitab al-Kafi in volume 1, book 4, chapter 68, hadith number 2. He reports when al-Husayn was about to leave this world, he gave his directive or his will to his daughter Fatima bint al-Husayn, in a secret document before the people openly. In a sealed document, before the people openly. When what had to happen to al-Husayn happened, she gave it to her brother Ali ibn al-Husayn. The narrator states, I then asked the Imam salamullahi alayhi, what was in it? May Allah grant you blessings. So the Imam replied, it contained all that the children of Adam would need from the beginning of the world until it would end. Ibn Sa'd, al-Baladhri, and al-Tabari, and their reports all corroborate one another, and we're quoting from al-Tabari, page 159 to 160, that al-Husayn alayhi salam was now left alone. And despite being weighed down by wounds in his head and his body, he began to strike against them with his sword, and they scattered to the right and to the left. And I wish to simply remind the listener at this point that the reports have shown us that the Imam was tired, the Imam was thirsty, he had lost all his companions, and he had lost almost all of his relatives. We have seen that he had been struck on his head with a sword, and that he had been hit with an arrow in his mouth, and he had been hit with an arrow in his throat. And despite all of this, he still fought on. Humayd ibn Muslim describes the Imam as follows. By Allah, I have never seen such persistence His sons have been killed, and the members of his household and his followers, yet he is still as brave as ever, and he has not allowed his spirits to leave him. When the soldiers attack him, he fights back with his sword and scatters them to the right and to the left of him like goats when a wolf comes upon them. As Shaykh al-Mufid rahimahullah reports in Kitab al-Irshad, in volume 2, page 111 to page 112, he reports that when Ash-Shamr saw that his men could not beat al-Husayn, he called for the cavalry and they came up at the rear of the foot soldiers. He ordered the archers to shoot at al-Husayn and they showered him with arrows until he became quilted with arrows like a hedgehog in its spikes. Al-Tabari further reports, and I believe he's still quoting the account of Humayd ibn Muslim, that when Sayyida Zainab saw this, she cried out, "I wish that the sky would come down upon the earth." Umar ibn Sa'ad had come closer to al-Husayn, and so she screamed out at him, "Ya ibn Sa'ad, is Aba Abdullah being killed while you watch?" Some could see Umar's tears flowing down his cheeks and beard as he turned his face away from her. Al-Tabari further reports, and this is on page 160, that Humayd ibn Muslim also narrates that al-Husayn was wearing a jubba of silk and a turban that had been dyed with woad. I heard him say before he was killed, while he was fighting on foot like a brave horseman, avoiding blows, taking advantage of gaps in the ranks and attacking the cavalry, "Are you urging one another to kill me? By Allah, after me you will not kill another servant of Allah, for Allah will be more displeased with you for killing than he will be with me. By Allah, I hope that Allah will favor me by making you lowly. Then may He grant me vengeance on you without your perceiving it. By Allah, if you kill me, Allah will send misfortune among you and cause the shedding of your blood. Nor will Allah be satisfied until He has multiplied the dread torture for you." He further reports, there was a long delay through the day. If the people had wanted to kill him, they could have done so. But each of them was averting the action. Each hoped that the other would kill al-Husayn. Each of them preferred that the others should do the deed. And I wish to highlight something here. Typically, when we hear about the Maqtal of Aba Abdullah in the Majalis, the Khatib rushes over it. They do not describe it in this level of detail. But I wish to draw your attention to the fact that even the details that I am giving you are not sufficient. Is that al-Husayn salamullah alayhi was alone fighting for a long time, because none of the cowards were willing to step forward and finish him. Each one of them kept hoping that someone else would do it, and so as a result, the Imam's suffering was prolonged. Ash-Shamr la'inahullah then shouted among the people, "Shame on you, why are you waiting for the man? Kill him, may your mothers be deprived of you." Al-Daynawari, Al-Tabari, and Al-Baladhri all report, and we are quoting the narrative of Al-Tabari on page 160. They report that an attack was launched against him from every side. A blow was struck against his left arm by Zur'a ibn Sharik al-Tamimi, which hit him on his shoulder. They withdrew while he was falling and stumbling. As he was in that plight, Sinan Ibn Anas al-Nakha'i la'inahullah attacked him and stabbed him with his spear, causing him to fall. Sinan then told Khawli ibn Yazid to cut off his head. The latter wanted to do so, but he was weak, and his hands trembled. Sinan then yelled at him, "May Allah crush your arms and take away your hands." He bent down and killed him and cut his head off. It was then handed to Khawli ibn Yazid.
لم أنس زينب بعد الخدر حاسرة تبدي النياحة ألحانا فألحانا مشجورة القلب إلا أن أعينها كالمعصرات تصب الدمع عقيانا تدعو أباها أمير المؤمنين ألا يا والدي حكمت فينا رعايانا وغاب عنا المحامي والكفيل فمن يحمي حمانا ومن يأوي يتامانا إن عسعس الليل وأرى بذل أوجهنا وإن تنفس وجه الصبح أبدانا ندعو فلا أحدا يصبو لدعوتنا وإن شكونا فلا يصغى لشكوانا قم يا علي فما هذا القعود وما عهدي تغض على الأقذاء أجفانا وتنثني تارة تدعو مشائخا من شيبة الحمد أشياخا وشبانا قوموا غضابا من الأجداث وانتدبوا واستنقذوا من يد البلوى بقايانا وإلى الفرات أباد الله غامره ورد وارده بالرغم لهفانا لم يطف حر غليل السبط بارده حتى قضى في سبيل الله عطشانا لم يذبح الكبش حتى يروى من ظمأ ويذبح ابن رسول الله ضمانا.
At-Tabarani reports in his book in Al-Mu'jam al-Kabir in volume 3, page 118, hadith 2828. And the report was authenticated by Al-Haythami in Majma' al-Zawaid in volume 9, page 227, hadith 15146. On the authority of Aslam al-Minqari, I entered upon al-Hajjaj, and Sinan Ibn Anas, the killer of Husayn, entered as well. Behold, in him was the henna of old age, with a long nose and a beardless face. He stood near al-Hajjaj, and al-Hajjaj asked him, Did you kill al-Husayn? He replied, Yes. Al-Hajjaj asked, How did you treat him? He answered, I struck him with a spear and cut him apart with the sword. Then al-Hajjaj said to him, Indeed, the two of you will never meet in a place. Ibn Sa'd further reports in his Tabaqat ibn Sa'd, volume 6, page 454, he confirms that indeed Sinan used to take credit for the killing of Imam al-Husayn salamullah alayhi. He reports that during the reign of al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, Sinan was present when al-Hajjaj held court. Al-Hajjaj la'inahullah asked if anyone present had any excellence in battle that they would like to share. Sinan stood up and said, I am the killer of al-Husayn. And al-Hajjaj replied, What an excellent merit. Sinan then returned to his house. His tongue became paralyzed, and he lost his mind to the extent that he used to eat and defecate in the same place. Thiqat al-Islam Kulayni rahmatullahi alayhi reports the following in Kitab al-Kafi, in volume 6, book 7, chapter 9. This is hadith 9 of the chapter. He reports with his chain to Imam al-Baqir salamullahi alayhi that when al-Husayn was murdered, he was wearing a dark-colored jubbah of khiz, and they found 33 torn spots in his cap, in his jubbah, because of being hit with swords, spears, or arrows. As in, according to Imam al-Baqir salamullahi alayhi, Aba Abdullah alayhi salam was struck 33 times on his head alone. And I remind you that this is the same Husayn who used to wrestle with his older brother al-Hasan, and Rasulullah would cheer for al-Hasan, and Jibreel would cheer for al-Husayn. He further reported, as recorded by Shaykhun al-Saduq rahimahullah in his Amali, that al-Husayn alayhi salam was killed while he had 320 something wounds from spears, sword slashes, and arrows. And it is reported that these were all on his front side because he did not turn around. This is the same Husayn who Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam once said about him and his older brother that they are the masters of the youth of paradise. Al-Tabari reported in his Tarikh on the authority of Imam al-Sadiq salamullahi alayhi, or rather this is on the authority of Shaykh al-Tusi rahimahullah. He reports that al-Husayn alayhi salam received 71 strikes from the sword during the Battle of Karbala. And this is the same Husayn who Rasulullah once said about him, Husaynun minni wa ana min Husayn. Al-Tabari further reports in his Tarikh in volume 19, page 160 to 161, from Humayd ibn Muslim, who narrates that Sinan ibn Anas la'inahullah did not let anyone go near al-Husayn without attacking him out of fear that he might be deprived of al-Husayn's head. Then he took al-Husayn's head and handed it to Khawli, and the body of al-Husayn was plundered as it was. Bahr ibn Ka'ab took his trousers, Qais ibn al-Ash'ath took his cloak, one of the Banu Awd called al-Aswad took his sandals, and one of the Banu Nahshal ibn Daram took his sword. The people then turned to the turmeric, the garments, and the camels in al-Husayn's camp, and they plundered them as well. Then the people turned to the women folk of al-Husayn, his baggage and his equipment. The women had their clothes ripped off their backs, and they were forcibly deprived of them, and they were taken away from them. Ibn Sa'd reports in his Tabaqat in volume 6, page 444, and this report is corroborated. And this report is corroborated by Ibn Sa'd, but it is reported by Shaykh al-Saduq with his sanad to Abdullah ibn al-Hasan al-Muthanna, who narrated from his mother Fatima bint al-Husayn. She says, the crowd came into our pavilion, our tent, and I was a young girl at the time, and I had gold anklets on my feet. A man rushed to take the anklets from my feet while he was weeping. So I said, what makes you cry, O enemy of Allah? And he said to me, how can I not weep when I am robbing the daughter of the Messenger of Allah? So I said, do not rob me. And he said, I fear someone else may take it. The Sayyidah Fatima bint al-Husayn continues, they took everything in the tent to the point that they even took the cloaks off our backs. With al-Husayn alayhi salam dead and his army crushed, Umar ibn Sa'd ordered a herald who announced, whoever brings a head will receive 1,000 dirhams. He then called out, and this was reported by Ibn Sa'd, he then called out, who will volunteer to go to al-Husayn and make his horse trample on al-Husayn's body? And so 10 of his men volunteered, and they trampled on the body of al-Husayn with their horses until they had crushed his back and his chest. And this is the same Husayn Salamullahi alayh, whose chest Rasulullah used to press to his own, and he would declare, oh Allah, I love him, so love whoever loves him. This is the same Husayn who Rasulullah used to say regarding him, whoever loves him and his brother and his mother and his father will be on my level in Jannah. And we will conclude with these last two reports, as well as a poem regarding the head of Abu Abdullah Salamullahi alayhi and his martyrdom. Al-Hakim reported with his chain to Abdullah ibn Abbas, and this can be found in his Mustadrak in volume 3, page 195 to 196, hadith 4822. He reports with multiple chains to Abdullah ibn Abbas that Allah revealed to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, I have killed for Yahya ibn Zakaria in retaliation 70,000 men, and I will be killing for the retaliation of the son of your daughter al-Husayn 70,000 and 70,000. Al-Kulayni further reported with his chain to Ja'far ibn Muhammad, when all that had happened to al-Husayn had happened, and this can be found in Kitab al-Kafi in book 1 in the chapter of Imam al-Husayn's birth and his life, hadith number 6. He reports that the angels wept and cried before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and said, how can such a thing happen to al-Husayn, your chosen one and the grandson of your prophet? The Imam alayhi salam then stated, Allah then showed to them the shadow of al-Qa'im ajjallahu farajahu sharif and said, through him I will take my revenge. Shaykhun as-Saduq further reported with his chain to Imam al-Ridha in his Amali in Majlis 27, hadith number 5, 4,000 angels descended towards the earth, but they found that al-Husayn alayhi salam had already been murdered. So they shall remain disheveled and dusty till al-Qa'im alayhi salam rises, and then they will be among his helpers, and their slogan shall be vengeance for the blood of al-Husayn alayhi salam. We will conclude with the following reports, inshaAllah. Shaykhun al-Himyari, rahmatullahi alayh, in Qurb al-Isnad, on page 36, he reported in report number 117, he reported on the authority of Abi Abdullah alayhi salam, salamullahi alayh, that he once asked his companion Fudayl, he asked him, تجلسون وتتحدثون or وتحدثون? قال نعم جعلت فداك. He asked him, do you gather together and do you narrate to one another? And he said, yes, may I be your ransom. So Imam al-Sadiq salamullahi alayhi said, إن تلك المجالس أحبها. I love these gatherings. فأحيوا أمرنا يا فضيل. So revive and bring attention to our matter, O Fudayl. فَرَحِمَ اللَّهُ مَنْ أَحْيَا أَمْرَنَا. May Allah have mercy on those who bring attention to our matter or our affair. يَا فُضَيْل مَنْ ذَكَرَنَا أَوْ ذُكِرْنَا عِنْدَهُ. O Fudayl, whoever mentions us or we are mentioned in front of him or in his presence, فَخَرَجَ مِنْ عَيْنِهِ مِثْلْ جِنَاحُ الذُّبَابِ. And the weight or the size of the fly's wing, meaning a tear, exits his eye. غَفَرَ اللَّهُ لَهُ ذُنُوبُهُ وَلَوْ كَانَتْ أَكْثَرْ مِنْ زَبَدُ الْبَحْرِ. So he says to him, Fudayl, whoever weeps for us, even if his tear be as small as the wing of a fly, Allah will forgive all of his sins, even if they are as much as the foam in the seas. And Shaykhun as-Saduq, rahmatullahi alayh, reported in Thawab al-A'mal, on page 507, we see the following report. He narrates with his chain that Abi Abdullah al-Husayn, that Abi Abdullah al-Imam al-Sadiq, salamullahi alayh, he asked the same thing to Fudayl. correct? He says that, or that he asked one of his companions the same question. تجلسون وتتحدثون قال قلت جعلت فداك نعم قال إن تلك المجالس أحبها فأحب أمرنا. This is تصحيف. It could be فأحب or فحي أمرنا إنه من ذكرنا وذكرنا عنده فخرج من عينيه مثل جناح الذبابة غفر الله ذنوبه ولو كانت أكثر من زبد البحر. And with that being said, my dear brothers and sisters, we conclude the Maqtal of Imam al-Husayn, Salamullahi alayhi, and inshallah we shall narrate some of the extraordinary occurrences that happened afterwards, some of the reports that have been narrated about his blessed head when it was taken to Kufa and when it was taken to Asham, as well as what happened to his family in the aftermath, in another lecture, in another session, inshallah. So we'll end with Surah Al-Fatiha, تسبقها الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد.